Good evening. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see you all. It's funny how sometimes I find like little pieces of Dharma just in little snippets in the daily life. And recently I came across this quote from Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet. And just these few lines. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. It's so like compact, and I feel like there's a lot there. So I want to talk a little bit about feelings, about emotions, kind of how to be with them, and kind of what our meditation or mindfulness practice can do as a support for them. I'll start with a little bit of a definition. We can consider that emotions are a form of communication from ourself to ourself. In some kind of way, there's this opportunity maybe to learn something about ourselves when we are in tune with our emotions, like, oh wow, I'm really angry. I guess this is more important to me than I realized. Or I feel sad. And this recognition, like, oh yeah, maybe I was more harmed or hurt or feeling grief or loss more than I realized, or something like this. Or maybe some anger, like, wow, okay, so maybe some borders or some boundaries were crossed and I felt like I was disrespected, and what is important to me? So it's a way in which emotions can be an important part of, having a rich and healthy life. And it's a way that emotions can really be a support for our lives. But we can only learn from our emotions if we can allow them to be there, if we can allow the emotion to exist and in some way be able to have some contact with it and to recognize, as best we can, what it is. And maybe the message it's telling us is obvious, maybe it's not obvious. But there's something about not pushing away our emotions or trying to run away from them, which, I spend a lot of time doing, certainly. Many of you know I'm trained as a scientist, and when I reflect back, I think maybe part of the reason why I went into science, because I thought, like, they don't have those messy emotions there. Little did I realize until I was a scientist, right, of course, that scientists turn out to be humans too. Plenty of emotions. So there's a way in which we can also consider that emotions are a composite. So part of it are these physical sensations, the way in which we feel like fear or dread or something like a lump in the throat, or maybe there's heat in the face with anger, or maybe there's a knot in the gut with anxiety or something like this. So all of these emotions, they have somatic signatures, not the same for everybody, but it turns out if you have an outline of a human body and you ask people to color in the areas, where is sadness, where is anger, where is loneliness, where is outrage, whatever it might be, it turns out that most people generally are coloring this in the same areas of the body. It tends to be the face and the front of the torso for the most part. It's not exactly the same for everybody. So there's these physical sensations. There's also physical expressions. Our faces are expressing emotions, and there's some people who even get trained in this and noticing the small flickers of the corners of the mouth or the eyebrows or the eyes or something, and can determine emotions. So our emotions are getting expressed maybe to others, even if we're not so much aware of them. And I'm sure we've all had this experience where somebody is saying one thing, but their expressions are saying something different. It feels a little confusing. Do I believe the words or what your eyebrows are saying to me? And then, of course, there is the thoughts, the stories, the whole narrative that we have that are going along with the emotion. I can't believe they said that, and the next time I see them, I'm going to do this, and this is the third time they've done it, or, whatever it might be. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm feeling sad again. I'm always sad. I've been depressed for a decade, and I'm never going to feel any better, and I always feel terribly sad. There's this way in which the stories can be perpetuating and fueling the emotions as well. So there's different aspects and might be considered a composite. And so in this way we can work with different aspects of emotions. And from one perspective we can say or consider that emotions, of course, are very personal. They're something that we experience and maybe are related to our life story, our history of our life, what we've experienced and how we've interpreted it. But for me, I found this helpful to also put in perspective that yes, all of our emotions are our own, but they are also, part of the human experience and this common humanity that we all have emotions, and it's also culturally and temporally specific. For example, there's so many books and movies and TV shows that about 19th century United Kingdom, I don't know exactly where we could say England, it's very unflappable and very proper, this way, right? Not a lot of emotion and, kind of upright. Right? So there's a certain era and location when they have this certain type of emotional, expression. And Jack Kornfield tells this story. Jack Kornfield is an elder in this lineage. He tells this story of, this was probably decades ago, teaching a retreat in Switzerland. This was at a time when there weren't so many meditation retreats. People from all around Europe came to Switzerland to attend this retreat. And at the end of the retreat, he was reflecting. Maybe I should say that during retreats, there's individual practice discussions where each retreatant has a private conversation with the teacher. And at the end of the retreat, Jack reflected, wow, it's quite something. Everybody from this one country had some anger and self-judgment was what was coming up for them. So members from another country were wildly just gesticulating, talking about how painful and beautiful and wonderful everything was. And then from a third country, they had all these existential questions of doubt and the meaning of life. So just this recognition, right, that there's cultural influences on our emotions too. And for me, that was very helpful to just realize, oh yeah, it's of course I have these emotions. I'm part of a cultural milieu in addition to having a particular story, particular experiences. And there are some that would say that the cultural milieu that is influencing our emotions today is this culture of outrage. This seems to be the one thing that everybody agrees on is to be outraged. And this is pretty unique that all the social classes, all the professions, everybody's outraged. And this is a way in which kind of this, in some ways, that we could even say the Western economy is built on this. There's so much of the media outlets and political discourse and advertising, these types of things are really promoting this sense of outrage. And part of this is that we assume that outrage is a reliable source for social change. We can feel oh yeah, I need to be outraged. This is the only reason or the only way things are going to be different than they are, and dang it, they need to be different. So I'm not going to comment on that, except maybe I'll just share this story for me that has had a big impact on me. There was a time when I worked for a company that publicly traded, and we had missed a major milestone that was going to affect the stock price. So, right, we have to send out a press release. So we sent out a press release saying that we had missed this milestone. Just the nature of my job, I knew all the details. And it was fascinating to see like all what was happening. I can't believe this company is doing it. They're only doing this because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, wow, that has absolutely not one thing to do with what the truth was. But then there's all this media kerfluffle that was 100% fabricated, had nothing, not one. It was just fascinating. It was actually that we had made a stumble, and we had took a chance on some manufacturing process that turned out not to work very well. And they made up all these stories about something. Quite something for me to just see the media, all the, I don't know, all the comments on things was just not even close. And not only was it not even close, it was filled with outrage. Like we were all of a sudden bad, terrible company. But it just turned out that we took a chance and it turned out not to work well on something completely unrelated. So now I have this story in my mind. So now when I'm seeing the media and saying things about it, I'm like, well, I wonder if that's the full story. It might be the full story, but it might not. And chances are it isn't. Chances are it isn't. So this idea of, emotions, whether it's outrage or sadness or loneliness or grief or joy or happiness, but in particular the difficult emotions. And difficult might be different. What's difficult for one person might not be difficult for another. But I like this story. This is also from Jack Kornfield, now that I think about it. I just love this story that kind of talks about this idea of one way to work with difficulties. So this is about the poison tree. And there's this tree that has this fruit that turns out to be poisonous. And there's this, some people, when they discover or see that there's this tree that has this poisonous fruit, their immediate reaction of, okay, we got to cut this down, got to get rid of this tree before somebody's harmed, before I'm harmed. And let's make sure that, get this out of here, that it doesn't harm anybody. And often this is our initial response to difficulties that arise, like, oh, get this out of here. This, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to even acknowledge that I have this type of emotion in me, this rage or this despair, whatever it might be. And sometimes there's this way in which we have this idea of we just want to distract ourselves, and we have these little rectangular things that we put in our pockets that are computers that we tap that can help us distract ourselves and entertain ourselves all day long, right? And we do this very often. So that's one way to respond to a poison tree, is to cut it down and get rid of it, so that or try to cut it down, try to get rid of it. But there's other people, and we might say they've journeyed a little bit further on the spiritual path, and they recognize, the power of the heart. And they want to bring some compassion and care to this tree. So they have this idea that, no, let's not cut it down. Let's just put a fence around it. We'll let the tree live and have this fruit, but we'll just put a fence around it to protect people so that they don't get harmed out of this. So they have this kindness. They put a fence around it. And so this is a really different relationship to the emotions, from get rid of it to like, oh no, it can be there. We're just going to be with it in a way that is not going to cause harm. And then there's a third group of individuals who meet this poison tree. We could say they've gone even further down the spiritual practice. That might be one way to consider it. And they come across a poison tree, a tree that has poison fruit, and their response is to say, oh, poison tree, perfect, just what I was looking for. And they pick the fruit very carefully and extract some of the elements of it, mix it with some other things, and make medicine out of it for themselves and for others. I love this story. This sense of so often what we think are our wounds or our difficulties, and I certainly have found this in my life, turn out to be a source of strength and source of connection to other people, a source of some vulnerability which allows some intimacy with others, some closeness. So this way that, how can we be with what we might consider to be the fruit from the poison tree? In Buddhist practice, how might it be a support for us to meet what we find difficult in life and be able to transform it into medicine for us and for others? And so some of us might have even come to Buddhist practice, to a meditation practice, because of emotions. Maybe we felt like terrible grief, have had some tragedy in our lives. Or maybe we just have some depression, some sadness, and maybe it's not entirely clear. But we thought we would give meditation a chance or something like this. There's a lot of people come to the Dharma with suffering. Maybe you just have this general sense, I don't know what to do with my life. It's not quite going the way I thought it was going to go. This job that I had was a great job. It was a great job. I felt like, I wouldn't be able to get a better job probably. But somehow, even though I had reached an enviable position, I felt like, something's not quite right. Something's not quite right with my life is not going the way I thought it would, even though I had, did what I thought I was supposed to do, right? So many of us are bringing this, some emotional discomfort or some uncomfortable emotions with us, and part of the reason why we find our ways to practice. And we might have this belief that, okay, if I just practice hard enough, or then emotions will just go away. I know I secretly had that idea, that they would, somehow I would be alleviated from these pesky emotions. Yeah, it turns out it doesn't work that way. Just like the scientists turn out to be humans, and meditation and Buddhist practice turns out to be filled with humans, notably ourselves and others. But we could say that with Buddhist practice, like this idea of freedom, peace, well-being, awakening, liberation, whichever words relate to you, which are meaningful for you, we could say that awakening to emotions is to actually feel them and not have them be a problem. To feel them, to nothing less and nothing more, just to feel them and have the problemness of them drained out. And maybe we might even have like our range of emotions can increase. My years of practice, I've experienced happiness and joy that I didn't know was possible. I've also experienced just terrible, like despair and darkness too. But there's a way in which our practice is designed to hold it, to help us be with it, to increase our capacity to be with it, so that we don't have to organize our life, our social situations, in order to just avoid any uncomfortable emotions. It's amazing how much energy we put into, okay, well, I feel a little bit uncomfortable in that situation, so I'm not going to go to that gathering, or I'm not going to stretch myself into this new thing that I might learn, or because I might get embarrassed. Or so many ways in which we limit ourselves just so that we can avoid some emotions. what would it be like? What would your life be like if you weren't afraid of emotions? Like, yeah, okay, I might be disappointed, I might feel frustrated, but I'm going to do it anyway. I might feel sad if this doesn't turn out the way I want. I'm going to meet it anyway. My partner, my coworker, the person that I see at the coffee shop, all of them might be having strong emotions. And sometimes we feel like we want to avoid people like that after, there's been a death in the family or something, and we want to, like, I don't know what to say, and so we avoid them. What would it be like to be fearless and be able to comfort others if comforting was what was appropriate and needed? That would be freedom. That would be freedom in our lives. So, one way that we might think about this is that mindfulness, being feeling the feelings, is being present for our emotions, is a way that we can, for ourselves, allow maybe an evolving or a resolution or a movement, or I like this word metabolism, of our emotions. Allows them to move because that's their nature. Often emotions can feel stuck, but there's a way in which they're stuck because the thoughts are like ruminating around and 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 around, often is what's happening. But if we can just meet our emotions, and I'll talk a little bit in a moment about how to do that, there's a way in which they can evolve and transform and shift and change. That is their nature. It's not their nature to always be the same. And often, if we can meet it, we might see that maybe it's not just one big, terrible emotion. Maybe it's a collection of emotions. Sometimes this grief may have some sorrow, a little bit of fear in there, maybe some disorientation or sense of powerlessness. And there's a way of which, when we make the room for them, these different ones, like we can meet them and care for them, these individual ones, and allow it to kind of be seen and known and pass away. Arise, be known, and pass away. Often with anger, there's sadness underneath, or fear underneath, for example. Or maybe we're not even sure what emotions are. Maybe we're like, okay, there's some fluttering going on deep inside and it feels uncomfortable and I don't want to look at it. And we just try to ignore it. Or maybe we're not, feel like we have a wide emotional vocabulary. That's okay too. Can we just meet whatever it is? So maybe this way of meeting emotions is a way in which we can make friends with them. Some people are comfortable with emotions and have a rich emotional life that support them and help connects them with others. Some people are not so aware of their emotional life and prefer it that way, but they find that their life is kind of flat and maybe feels stale and dry in some kind of way. And maybe some people just have a lot of resistance and fear about their emotional life, don't really want to experience them. And I feel like in my life there's been different seasons where I felt like, I've had a lot of emotions. I felt very emotional, and times when not so much, but I felt I could feel them, and I would say certainly now, it's really been transformed. I had this certain emotions are okay to feel: happiness, well-being, joy. The sad ones, the confusion ones, the anger ones, not okay. But I don't feel I have that feeling anymore. And this absolutely is due to practice, meditation practice. So, is there this way that we can make friends with our emotional life, however it is right now. This practice is not asking us to be somebody we're not. It's not asking us to completely be different than who we are. So we start with whatever might be arising for us now. Maybe we have this idea that we want to be friends with our emotional life, which means can we offer emotions? We might consider them as energies, maybe. Can we meet them with acceptance and compassion? And if it's difficult to do that, can we meet the resistance to meet the emotion? And then if it's difficult to do that, instead we find ourselves doing this intellectualization and rationalization and just thinking about things and not really feeling I'm going like this in the body, because often I feel emotions in the body. It used to be all exclusively in my head, but now it's in the body. But we can just start with, oh yeah, okay, there's more just intellectualization and rationalization and a certain way in which we actually aren't feeling emotions, but maybe there are just some mental activity around with them. We can start with that. And maybe just hang out there for a little bit with the intellectualization. And just allow that to, maybe it's some breadcrumbs to something else that's richer, that's deeper. But there's a way that being, in particular with difficult emotions, can be like getting into a pool of cool water. Like, oh, okay, we'll put our toes in. And maybe that's enough to begin with. There is no timetable. We don't have to push ourselves, force ourselves to do things in a particular schedule. And we put our toes in, we put our feet in, our lower legs. And when we feel comfortable, we can go deeper in on another time. Maybe there is a time when we feel like we can go all the way in, and then maybe some time in which we go into this cool water putting our head under the water. And there's this way in which we recognize that, like, especially like with this idea of like being underwater, we just recognize, oh, this emotion is just part of the energy of life. It's not a problem. It's just what's being experienced right now. So how do we do this? This whole idea of putting toes in the water, like how do we do that? So I'll talk about some practical things here. So some of this is can be on the cushion or off the cushion in your daily life or during meditation. I'll start with some easy things, some obvious things. Posture. Of course, the mind and body and emotional life and everything are connected. And it's striking how, you notice how when I was talking about depression, I was kind of like doing this with my posture, because this is how it feels. We often are kind of like slumpy and collapsed into ourselves. Don't underestimate the impact it can have to have an upright posture. It communicates a certain amount of respect for ourselves, for whatever emotion is having. And there's something about being upright that brings a little bit more spaciousness and openness, like literally, like in the chest and the torso. But just having a more upright posture can be a tremendous support. So just notice if you're feeling like, whoa, these emotions, and sometimes we want to get into a fetal position or something like this when it feels terrible. If possible, can you be in an upright posture? If possible, if your body allows you to not use a backrest, but to sit up with your own, being supported by yourself. Sometimes on retreat, I know I've done this, sitting in upright posture with tears coming down, but sitting here, and there's something like, okay, sadness is happening, but it's not like the end of the world. It's just tears and it's just sadness. This is what it means to be a human. All of us have loss. All of us have sadness. So one, posture. Maybe I'll sprinkle something in here too. Maybe even if posture doesn't work, feel your feet on the ground. Get like grounded. Feel like connected to the earth in some kind of way. This can be a tremendous support. Feel maybe what your hands are touching. Just, something tangible. Because the mind is wanting to spin out in stories, and we're trying to just like disrupt the momentum and just be here now. Because the stories are elsewhere. And that's not what's actually happening, what's in the mind. So the hand placement also can be something. I said about what the hand is touching, but sometimes it can be like, to put your hand on your chest, like, oh my gosh, this is hard. But there's a way, to sit upright and have your hand on your chest is a way to acknowledge the difficulty, but it's also like a gesture of care and respect for yourself instead of this, trying to hide or something. Or maybe there's the belly, you just like, wow. Maybe some breathing. So that's the next thing, the breath. It can be that, with mindfulness, we're just noticing what the breath is doing. But if we feel like there's a lot of emotions, whether we're meditating or just out in daily life, the breath can be a tremendous support. And one way is just to, in a subtle way, not a big, giant, exaggerated way, but just to extend the exhale a little bit. It can just be a normal inhale, but extend the exhale a little bit. This works with the parasympathetic nervous system, just helps our physiology, our nervous system, just to calm down so that we feel a little bit more less frantic maybe, or less fearful maybe, or this way of just like, okay, I can be here with this. So is there this way that then we can maybe explore the physical sensations? There's this way that, as I said, emotions can be experienced in the physical body, and letting the mind is going to protest. It will not want to do this. But can you just be with the physical experience? Sadness, for example, pressure around the eyes, this heaviness in the shoulders. Maybe there's this feeling of wanting to collapse. And just to be with the physical sensations as best you can. And most likely what will happen is you'll be with the physical sensation, and then the mind is going to want to tell you why you really shouldn't be doing that. And you got to think more about this terrible, awful thing. And then you just come back to the physical sensation. And then the mind is going to pull you away. Just come back to the body. The mind's going to pull you away. Come back to the body. Exactly like we do with meditation, of coming back to the breath. Again, it doesn't matter how many times. We do the same thing in a kind, gentle way, just coming back to the bodily sensations. And then there's a way in which this bodily sensations, if we can be with them as best we can. If you feel like, whoa, I can't do that, that's just too much, then be with your posture as best you can. If this just feels like, whoa, I can't do that, do something else. Go outside, be with nature, talk to a friend, call somebody, do something like this. We don't want to get into overwhelm. But is there a way that we can just start to put our toes in the water, or our foot in the water, or our lower body in the water? There's this way that to be with the physical sensations, there's a way that we can trust the contact with the emotion. And kind of maybe trust that it knows, the emotion knows how long to be there, or maybe there's this way to recognize that emotions are a natural process. We might say that they have their own I don't know if it makes sense to say they have their own intelligence, but can there be a way in which we can trust that we don't have to fix it that moment? We so often want to just fix it. We turn it into a big giant problem, we turn it into a nail, then we come along with our hammer and trying to hammer it. But can we allow it to be there and to be felt as best we can, and allow it to transform itself? We are not doing the transforming. We are not the one that are making it change. We're just making the space. We're creating the conditions in which it will naturally do what it does, what emotions do. I am not promising any particular timeline. I am not promising any miraculous cure. I am promising this is a way forward. If we work with this as best we can, without any particular demand that emotions be done at a particular time or only certain emotions be expressed, there's something that happens when we meet them in this way. Our confidence grows and our capacity to be with them grows. And it gets easier and easier and easier and easier. The more we do this as best we can, it will be uncomfortable. Can that be okay? Can that be okay? To have some discomfort, to feel uncomfortable. This is a way to have greater freedom in life, not only for ourselves, but so that we can support and care for others, not to be afraid of their emotions. And this is a way in which our practice can be a benefit to the world, maybe in some tiny way, maybe in a giant way. So, emotions. No one can tell you how to feel them or what to do with them. But is there a way that we can practice to find the freedom with them and learn to make the medicine out of our emotional life for ourselves and for others? Maybe I'll end just with a simple thing here. A lot of words I said, but really the physical body is really a support for emotions. We so much want to think our way through them. If you could think your way through them, you would have done it already. Because how much rumination, thinking do we do about our emotions? It doesn't work. We have to actually experience them in the body, it turns out. So with that, I think I'll end, and I'll open it up to see if there are some questions or comments. Thank you. Does anybody have some questions or comments? Nobody's emotional about emotions. This is good. Maybe this felt like, oh, this old hat, I knew all this.
Well, Diana, I'll say something.
Yes.
Thank you for your talk.
Yes.
And I was thinking about outrage.
Yeah.
Back in the 1980s, I had sat a retreat with James Hillman, and he talked about how people were, this was a retreat for men, how many men were, instead of having outrage, were having enrage.
Oh.
So they saw things that they didn't like in the world, but it was all going inside, and it wasn't being expressed as action in the world. So that was, so sometimes when I hear the word outrage, I always think, well, am I more of an outrage or an enrage? Or is there some skillful way to work with both of those?
Thank you, thank you. I never heard this expression, enrage, and I never thought about this, outrage. Enrage has the word rage in there. Thank you, Jim. It's fantastic. In the 80s, enrage and outrage, or they weren't expressing their outrage, so it was causing the enrage.
Yeah, well, James Hillman was talking about how people would have this energy about wanting to respond to the world, but they would bring it with them into the therapist's office, and it would all get processed in the therapist's office, and nothing would happen out in the world.
Mm.
So he was actually advocating for people to do something constructive with that energy.
Yeah, yeah. And emotions can really be a fuel for energy. We might even say it's a type of energy that can be a fuel for action in the world. Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question?
Just a couple days ago, I was talking to someone about this idea of outrage, and he said, my thought is, we need a new bumper sticker. And it says, if you weren't outraged, you might actually be able to do something about it.
Very nice.
So, I don't know, it was food for thought.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, people are busy being outraged, and they're outraged if you're not outraged, and yeah, yeah. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so thank you all. Thank you for your attention, and I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of the evening and safe travels home. Thank you. And if you like, you're welcome to come up here and talk to me. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.